Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome at the big final of the Doctoral Derby 2022. Let me start with introducing you the menu of today. So first I will introduce everything, but I will start with introducing myself. I'm Simon and I will be your host for today. After my 5 minutes of fame, it's the time for the real heroes of today, or 9 finalists of the Doctoral Derby who will pitch their research, years of research in only 3 minutes time. Then the jury will have 3 minutes for questions. Well, hopefully it stays at 3 minutes. And when all the 9 candidates have presented their research, then we will have a break. We will need it, I guess. Well, at least I will. And in that break, we will vote for the best presenter, because not only the jury will vote for a winner, you can also vote a winner with a voting. I will explain later on when the time is right. So, and after the voting, after the jury discusses who will win this edition of the Doctoral Derby, we'll of course will announce them, and we will have a small party with foods and drinks downstairs in the, on the first floor. So now we are here in the finals of the Doctoral Derby, but those 9 candidates of today, well, they were not picked randomly from their desks. Go to the Muntpunt and, well, you can pitch your research. Well, they needed a trajectory started with an online training, how they can write a research summary that's actually readable for men like me. Well, actually read your research for people like your grandma. After that training, they could write a final research summary. Eventually, they could, if they want, have a self-study pitch training. And then we've organized 3 pre-selections. We have 3 doctoral schools. We have a doctoral school in engineering, a doctoral school in social sciences, and a doctoral school in life sciences and medicine. From every doctoral school, 3 candidates were selected for today. So the 9 finalists you see today are actually, well, the best of the best we have selected for you. So we did already a good job. Now it's time for the finalists to do the job for us. Okay, well, they were already good because they were selected for the finals, but it could be better, so we offered a training by The Floor Is Yours, where they learn to present with impact. So they could already present, now they could present with impact. And they will show it today, hopefully, because today we are at the finals here at live, at Muntpunt. So now it's your time to shine, and afterwards we will decide who will be the big winner of the Doctoral Derby 2022. So, why would you want to win the Doctoral Derby? Well, at least you get coverage in the VUB media, a big community, of course. Your name will be in the Hall of Fame of the Doctoral Derby forever. So even after you're dying, you're still in the Doctoral Derby Hall of Fame. And maybe the more interesting thing, you get a working credit of 500 euros. Who will decide? Well, you will decide, but also a jury that's here present. We have the 3 directors of the doctoral schools. We have Arnoud Zonderman from Saimingo. We have Sammy Leurs from our Science Outreach Office, and Lauren Pauls from our Researcher Training and Development Office. And last but not least, the winner of the last edition of the Doctoral Derby, Annelies Augustijns, will select a winner this year. So without further ado, I will give the floor to Olga, who will present her work.
Okay, I hope now you can hear me. Okay, yeah. Who is not familiar with lengthy data protection notices every time you download a new app on your smartphone? And who never had to deal with confusing cookie banners every time you visit a website for the first time? However, have you ever thought that this information might not be accessible to every website or app user the same way as it is for you? 1 out of 5 of people in the European Union live with different forms and degrees of disability. That can translate into diverse accessibility requirements, including, for instance, how somebody engages into communications and access information. For example, some people may be able to read a text only if it's provided to them with the proper colors and fonts. However, for others, a sign language version might be more appropriate. So, how does this link data protection law and the concept of accessibility? Several organizations, including public authorities, private companies, universities, all of them have to provide us with information with respect to how, why, and when they process our personal data. For example, our name, home address, medical records, or banking details. However, several studies show that information provided in this context is usually incomprehensible, hard to find or navigate through, and rarely takes into account accessibility requirements. Let me illustrate this with a quick example. Several people with visual impairments depend on screen readers in order to access information on a website or an app. That means that if an application or website are not built with accessibility in mind, some information, including personal data information, might not even be noticeable to them at all. And why is this problematic, you may ask? Well, it is very problematic because if we are not able to access and understand this information, first, we cannot make informed decisions. And most importantly, we cannot exercise our rights because we might not even know that we have them in the first place. So, in my research, I try to raise awareness with respect to the importance of information transparency and accessibility in the context of data protection law. How I do this? I map best practice, shortcomings, challenges, and solutions. So what I want you to take back home today, my main message, is that it is not enough that organizations make information about our personal data available. They also have to ensure that they eliminate communication and information barriers and make the information accessible to the widest audience possible. Because transparency and accessibility can only go hand in hand. Thank you.
I think this was a very good start of our evening, so I will now give the word to the jury who can ask a few questions, but take into account only 3 minutes time.
Hey, thank you for your presentation. In your presentation, you said that you were mapping the shortcomings and the best practices. I was wondering what methodology you're using for this. How do you get all the data, and what do you do with it exactly? How?
Yeah, so primarily I'm a lawyer. That means I primarily do legal research and I use legal interpretation methodologies. But I also do limited empirical research. That means that, for instance, I document and observe. I can bring you an example of my recent research, which is that I went through all the website of personal data protection authorities in EU, and I checked how do they implement accessibility standards in their websites. Most of them were just partially compliant, not fully compliant. And I also do limited linguistic research because I also have a small background in linguistics as well.
Okay. Can you give some examples of a best practice or something that a government, for example, could do to push more transparency?
Thank you very much. So indeed, the last years there have been more directives at EU level promoting accessibility. The EU actually considers at the moment, they are creating a platform with respect specifically to accessibility resources in order to enforce the cooperation among the different states. But an example I can give you is that public bodies actually, and in general public authorities, they're obliged currently with the new legislation to have accessibility features on their websites and the services they deploy. And in my research, I have seen that many of them try to provide some features, for instance, the ability to change the fonts, the sizes, the colors, Also, some of them have a sign language interpretation, or you can directly connect to a sign language interpreter and speak with them directly. There are also some of them that provide in Braille language information, for instance, for people with visual impairments, and yeah, so forth. Yes.
I have a question about, is it a real problem? Because when I get to these web pages and there's an agreement or something, I really, the 10 pages I don't read, I just click and then I get me to the new page. So how big is the problem really?
Yeah, well, I was expecting kind of this question, to be honest, because it's something that also other people have asked me in other conferences when I present my research. And the truth,
I think we'll have to leave it there, because I said only 3 minutes, and I think a lot of people are looking forward to the foods and drinks. I will thank you, Olga, for your presentation. So, as Olga said, we had a lawyer on stage, but next we don't not have only a doctoral researcher, but apparently also a soccer coach. So I'm really looking forward to the next presentation. The floor is yours, Olaya.
Imagine these people cheering for their favorite football team. If all of these people would suffer from pancreatic cancer, unfortunately, after 5 years, we would not have many supporters left. Pancreatic cancer will become the second leading cause of cancer-related deaths. However, in contrast to other tumor types, only small improvements have been made during the past years to treat pancreatic cancer. It is clear that defeating pancreatic cancer will be a difficult game. My name is Olaya, and as coach of the home team, I will explain our tactics to defeat the pancreatic cancer team. So, who are the players from the opposite team to watch out for? Current treatments mainly focus on attacking this player, the tumor. He is indeed the captain of the team, but a football team does not only exist of one player, of course. Let's not forget about the inflammation that is induced by the tumor. This player should not be underestimated, since he can cause other cancer-related diseases, such as cancer anorexia and mood disturbances. And these diseases, on their turn, contribute to the poor survival of pancreatic cancer patients. As you can see, it will not be an easy game, since the players from the opposite team are very well attuned to each other. But here is where we will make the difference with our tactics. We will not only focus on the captain of the team, but also on the other team players. And there is one player in particular that seems to be important. Let's say the Lionel Messi of the pancreatic cancer team. It is a protein that is present on tumor cells and helps them to survive and grow. That protein is called XCT. Luckily, we already know from previous games against other cancer types that blocking XCT reduces tumor growth. But it also helps against inflammation and mood disturbances, since this protein is also present on cells of the immune system and the brain. My research in particular is focused on studying what happens when we block the function of XCT in pancreatic cancer, and if by this we are able to destabilize the entire pancreatic cancer team. So, to conclude, rather than putting all our efforts in tackling the different players one by one, let's play it smart and put XCT offside to win this game.
Well, at least you won the game already, so let's see what the jury thinks. Someone with a question in the jury? Or everything was clear?
Before asking a question, I would like to compliment you on the originality of your presentation. Was really nice. I have a question, something you didn't had the opportunity, I think, to dig into during your presentation. But why is it that pancreatic cancer apparently is, you said it's going to become the second most common type of cancer, if I'm correct. So why is it? Can you shed some light on that?
So indeed, it will become the second most
Deadly cancer.
So there are several reasons for this. So first of all, so as I said, in other cancer types, there have been some improvements lately, more specifically immunotherapy, so boosting the immune system to fight against the tumor, but this apparently is not so efficient in pancreatic cancer. Then secondly, there's also an aging issue, let's say, so the population gets older, so of course more people will develop cancer and then also pancreatic cancer. And then thirdly, the risk factors for pancreatic cancer are, for example, obesity and diabetes, which currently are also more rising. So these three points make that pancreatic cancer will be more frequently occurring, and therefore it's also a very aggressive tumor, which makes that it will be amongst the highest, deadliest cancers.
Okay, thank you.
Hi. What are some of the less wanted side effects of putting XCT, have to be careful, aside?
So under healthy conditions, so in a healthy individual, XCT is mainly expressed on cells of the immune system and the brain. Most of the information that is known about XCT in the brain, there it seems that blocking XCT seems to be rather beneficial than detrimental. Then the role of XCT on the immune system, there needs to be more research to really be able to have a clear-cut answer for this.
So how are you going to inhibit XCT or target the cell that expresses too much, or how will you do this?
So in my research, I work with genetic modification using CRISPR-Cas9. So this is maybe something that you know, since recently it was also in the news with twins that were manipulated so that they would become less susceptible to HIV. So I use this method to delete XCT in my tumor cells in a petri dish. Of course, this is far away from clinic, let's say. However, there is a drug that is being used, so it exists, it's used in pharmacy, in clinic, it's being used for rheumatoid arthritis, for example, and that drug is also blocking the function of this protein.
Okay, I think you answered them all correctly. Well, after the soccer game, Olaya, I will give the word to Shabnam. I hope your story sticks as well. So, the floor is yours. after this very nice fairy tale, I think maybe the jury is asleep, but however, do you have some extra questions?
Actually, the original story was going to involve more of emancipation for the princess, but couldn't fit that into a 3-minute timeline while also, but we did take that into account. So the original story did involve more independence and empowerment for the princess. But we did try to represent her in a more, modern, updated way with the dark hair and lines on her face.
So, how much glue are we talking about? One frog, can it make like what? A drop? Or if I have 5 frogs, I can make a stick of prit?
It really depends on the size of the frog. For instance, the males are about this small, the females are slightly larger. And it will also depend on how long they've been in captivity. Because if a frog is not so accustomed to humans, it will start secreting as soon as it's stressed out. But the more it becomes used to handling, it becomes more difficult. And another variable is how long it has been since the last time you harvested it for its secretion. So it can produce quite a lot, but it will depend. It can range from like 20 to 500 milligrams or so, depending on the frog. And no. Once it empties its glands, it requires time to fill them again. So maybe you'll be able to, we call it milking, milk them about once a month or so. Yeah.
One final question.
Yeah, that is, okay, this study is purely fundamental in the sense that we want to identify what makes the frog glue sticky. But if you're thinking about applications, then it would have to be purely recombinant because as you pointed out, you cannot harvest that amount of glue. And secondly, even if you could, the glue contains other metabolites and molecules that could be toxic to humans or other organisms. So that's why we're trying to identify the ingredients, proteins, responsible, so that ultimately these can be produced in a recombinant manner, and those can be put forward to use for human applications. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentations and the nice answers. It seems like the princess needs some emancipation. Michiel will give him an example how the princess can, do that.
Freeze your eggs, free your career. This was a cover of a business magazine a few years ago. Now, as a feminist philosopher, I was intuitively triggered by this picture. So women could freeze their eggs in order to focus on their career and perhaps have later a child in life. This is also called social egg freezing. The name social egg freezing is chosen because it's contrasted with medical egg freezing, when women are freezing their eggs during a cancer treatment. Now, according to the author of this article, social egg freezing is emancipatory for women because it gives them more freedom and control over their biological clock. But is this really the case? Is social egg freezing the next step towards women's emancipation? I found out that there was a lot of speculation about this whole idea of social egg freezing instead of listening directly to women themselves. Because what do women think actually about this whole idea of freezing their eggs? To find that out, I decided to recruit 21 women who were interested in social egg freezing in Belgium, and I did in-depth interviews with them about their motivations and values. I thoroughly analyzed the interviews and searched for recurring themes and dilemmas in their stories. And I came up with two fascinating findings. The first one has to do with the whole motivation for choosing social egg freezing. Now, in contrast to this whole idea that social egg freezing is related to career women, the woman that I interviewed said that social egg freezing is more related with relational problems and not finding the right partner. As you can see, for instance, in this quote, it has nothing to do with a career for this participant. It's not that I wanted to reach the top and only then I would start thinking about children. For her, it was more relational. Now, the second interesting finding has to do with the emotional responses involved in the whole procedure of social egg freezing. Now, the average age of my participants was 35, and they reasoned when they become 40 and infertile, they would not want to be confronted with infertility and have some regrets because they not have frozen their eggs earlier. So they anticipated a kind of decision regret. Rather do something than do nothing at all. And secondly, there was also this whole idea that it was related with negative emotions such as fear and uncertainty about this future. This is also nicely illustrated in this quote where a participant told me like, I'm really uncertain about what is going to happen in the coming years, and in the last part she's saying very nicely, there are no guarantees, but at least I've done something and I cannot blame myself later on because I've frozen my eggs. Now, is social egg freezing really emancipation set in stone? Now, as a philosopher, I like to ask good questions instead of giving wrong answers. I think it's good that there is attention for social egg freezing, but we should not get trapped in stereotypical thinking. It's better to show the real experiences of women and think about what the role social egg freezing and other technologies can play in their life. And I think this cover can go straight away into the waste paper bin. Thank you.
Well, since you're asking the questions, I guess the jury can give the answers from now.
I hope so.
Hi, thank you for this presentation. I was wondering, how did you select the women for your research? Was it based on age, culture, background, social background?
I worked together, to give a little bit of background, with the research center in Jette, and I recruited participants who were consulting the fertility center in Jette, so there was already a selection bias because it's a certain type of population who is going to the fertility clinic. So they were mostly white, higher educated, and had enough of financial capacity because social egg freezing is quite expensive to do and it's not refunded. So I hope that's an answer for your question.
Well, that would have been related to one of my questions, but then perhaps another question. Could you briefly explain to us what would count for you as emancipatory? So is the only factor whether it allows more of a career, or do you have other things that you consider in this definition?
Yeah, for me, it's a very philosophical question to think about what is emancipation, because it could be directly related to ideas of oppression. So I always think in this kind of binary between oppression and emancipation. But I would say emancipation is more like giving more choice, more freedom, but if you give somebody more freedom, it often relates also with more control. So you get this kind of contradiction. So I hope it's not getting too tricky, but for me it's really complex to say this is emancipatory because there are also negative sides related to it. So I would not give, I cannot give just one answer, but I would say that's my philosophical background. Sorry.
A similar question related to the selection of the persons. Did you also ask, well, women in the street what they thought about this?
I would like to do it, and I did it in my personal life, but in my research it was not possible because I really selected women who went to the research center to have like, just for practical reasons, that it's really, that there are straight boundaries, but who's a participant and who's not. But it's a good idea for further research to go in the street and ask questions.
Okay, I think we have a lot to think about after your
I hope
presentation.
so.
Thank you. Then we can go to Lianne. After the reception later on, we will maybe have some liver problems, and Lianne will tell you what to do after tonight. So.
All right. Do you also use some of these products? Yes, some of these products during your regular life. Thinking about taking some paracetamol because you have a headache, drinking some alcohol, or eating some unhealthy food. But did you actually know that some of these products can damage your liver as well? Well, don't you worry, we can still have that drink after we're done here at the Derby, because it's only when we take too much or too much for a longer period of time that it can really damage your liver. It's quite annoying, but I'm sorry. So this liver damage, is this really a problem? Well, yes, it can really become a problem, because when all the healthy tissue in the liver is replaced by scar tissue, eventually the liver will malfunction. And then eventually the liver will malfunction, and unfortunately at this moment we do not have any medication that can stop this process of scar tissue formation. So at this moment we are trying to find new solutions for this problem. And during my research we have trying to see how we can stop this process of scar tissue formation, and also during this research into the process of scar tissue formation, then we use a lot of lab animals. So to tackle these problems, we have we have some solutions. So in our lab, we make small mini livers. And these mini livers, we can try to find the processes for this liver malfunction and for this process of scar tissue formation. And also, we can see if we can find new medication. So therefore, with these mini livers, we can see what this process is about. So with, sorry, yes. Sorry, okay. So with our mini livers, we can see and find if we can find some new medication, and see if we can stop this problem, yes or no. No, I totally lost it. I'm sorry. So with our mini livers, we can see if we can stop this process of liver, of this scar tissue formation, and see if we can find new medication. And with this research, we can look for, okay, totally mayhem here. So
Maybe you can go for the next one and you can try again when, yeah. So I suggest that if the microphone isn't working for any of the other candidates, you just put it off and you can go through without the microphone. It's much easier. So, yeah, only this microphone. It's like you want, okay?
yeah,
You can choose, do you want to restart right now or maybe take a few minutes and you can choose yourself?
maybe take a break. And
Okay,
we'll see
no
later.
problem.
Sorry. There you go, and this one.
So next on stage is Joren. I did not see any hydrogen detection systems here, so maybe we're not safe, or are you telling me something different. I'm very curious.
Okay. Imagine it is the year 2050. Our energy supply does not rely anymore on fossil fuels like gas or oil, but it is based on renewable sources like wind and the sun. But how do we transport this energy and how do we store it in our ports? Therefore, we use hydrogen. But there is a problem with hydrogen, as it is very flammable. How flammable hydrogen is? Well, let me explain. Let's say that your hydrogen car is parked in your garage, and because the tank isn't closed properly, 2 kilograms of hydrogen escapes. This is approximately half your tank. You might not smell, see, or taste this, but the smallest spark, for example, from static electricity, can cause an explosion. An explosion, yes, compare it to a gas explosion. And that is why it is so important to detect hydrogen. So the question is, how do we do this? Aren't there hydrogen detectors? Yes, there are hydrogen detectors that work like smoke detectors, but they detect hydrogen. I'm sorry. So I hear you ask, I hear you ask, what is then the problem if we have detectors? There are no clear guidelines about where to place these detectors inside a room. It is a very good idea to place them at the ceiling of any room where you expect hydrogen to leak. This technique is sufficient for smoke detectors, but as hydrogen is very flammable, we want to make sure that in new applications it is safe, even if there is no one watching. So therefore, in my research, we want to search for the ideal location for hydrogen detectors. How we will do it? We will use software. The idea is to tell the software where hydrogen can leak. And in return, the software tells us what is the ideal location for the hydrogen detectors. This way, we can detect a leak before it is dangerous. We can also use the results to provide guidelines for our industry. So hopefully we can, in the year 2050, safely use hydrogen. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I was wondering, isn't it possible to make some sort of scented hydrogen as we do with gas now?
Yes, so they are searching indeed for giving it smell like gas, because natural gas also has no smell of its own, so they add something. But for some application, like fuel cells, also want very pure hydrogen, so they need to add the smell without compromising the hydrogen, because then you get problems with the lifetime of a fuel cell, for example.
Okay, thank you.
Short question, is the hydrogen detector as small as the size as you showed us, or?
There are a lot of types of detectors, but the size is comparable to this one.
Okay, so this is not a hydrogen detector?
No, this is a smoke detector.
Okay.
I don't have hydrogen, they're very expensive.
Which we are familiar with.
Yeah,
okay.
This is the one you're
I have another silly question. In your abstract, you are referring to Russian gas. Renewal of Russian gas. I was wondering if there was a difference between Russian gas and Australian or gas from the United States, or is it a reference to the political situation we are now in?
There are slight differences in gases, and like oil is the same all over the world, but yeah, it's approximately the same. So for burning it, it doesn't matter that much. So, but
Thank you.
Can you convince me of how important hydrogen will be, like in a percent, in our society of the future? Yeah.
Okay, so it's a difficult one. So, but hydrogen, there is already a lot of hydrogen used, but at this point they make it with a CO2 intensive way. So making green hydrogen will be certainly a case. And in the beginning, we will need the green hydrogen for the industry to replace the carbon-intensive hydrogen that we have now. So that's the first start.
So I remember that hydrogen will be the future, and we will be all safe in 2050. So let's hope we make it until then. Next on stage, we have Lina, if that's okay.
If you don't mind, I will clean up the trash here.
Lina will tell us something more about GDPR and how we can be empowered by the new legislations. So.
Identity theft is considered to be a typical risk of a personal data breach. But what if I tell you that depression, divorce, and even death are also among possible consequences of a personal data breach? If you think this is far-fetched, think about the 2015 Ashley Madison data breach. It concerned the leak of over 30 million users' data of a Canadian adultery website that was designed essentially for people in committed relationships to cheat on their partners. Interviews with some of the affected individuals revealed that the flood of leaked private details resulted in counseling sessions and in divorce. In addition, several suicides have been linked to the breach. So what if a similar data leak happened in a member state of the European Union? It is likely that users of a similar website in the EU would not be informed about a personal data breach. Why not? Because a company concerned could argue that it had implemented appropriate technical and organizational measures, or that such a notification would involve a disproportionate effort. This in turn poses questions about the General Data Protection Regulation, also known as the GDPR. We are in the 4th year of its enforcement, and there is still no overview of company communication practices. This is alarming because only a well-informed individual can take actions in order to protect himself or herself online. For example, individuals could change compromised passwords, or they could choose a provider of services that does not experience regular incidents. Therefore, in my research, I argue that going forward, companies should take stock of the personal and commercial fallout caused by personal data breaches. And in ever increasing digital environment, it is the responsibility of companies to provide us with ample data breach notifications so we can make informed decisions about whom we want to entrust with our personal data.
Are there any questions?
Yes. So you tell the companies need to provide ample data breach notification. So what does that mean for you?
This means exactly what I tried to articulate during my presentation, that companies should let us know when they experience a data leak, or in other words, a personal data breach.
And through what means? I mean, also by email or an SMS, or would they need also your data for that, right?
That's a very good question. But typically, service providers have our contact details. Because very often when registering for a website, we either use our email address or some other, like, you know, we connect through some other services, for example, Facebook login. So they have possibility to reach out to us, and in my opinion, claiming that it involves a disproportionate effort is somewhat outrageous.
Hi, Lina. Just a small question. How do you judge in your study, in your methodology, whether this is considered empowering or not to show these notifications?
That's a very good question. So, because I have a legal background and I am preparing my PhD thesis in law, I did not study the empowerment element itself. However, during my research, I analyzed the objectives of the introduction of a personal data breach notification in the Gdpr. And the main reason for its introduction was to empower individuals. And that's why I use this argument in my thesis. I hope that answers your question.
One last question.
Okay. Difficult one. For new PhD candidates, we have some information on data management, on the data management plan that all researchers have to make up or to set up. And I was wondering if you have experienced the information as good enough to start your research, and is there any reference made to the GDPR?
I haven't used this particular information provided by VUB because I did not conduct any studies with human participants.
Okay, I think that's it. Thank you very much, Lina.
Thank you.
Yeah. So next up is Eva. What? No, she's already here. She's very fast. Hopefully her presentation is also in time, just in time, 3 minutes. She will tell us all about the aftermath of having breast cancer. So.
Here you see Ilse. Ilse lost her femininity, she's chronically fatigued, and does not feel ready to go working again as a nurse. Ilse thinks every day, my life will never be the same anymore. You probably also know someone with a history of breast cancer, but did you know that fighting breast cancer doesn't stop with beating the cancer alone? On top of surviving it, 1 out of 3 must deal with chronic pain complaints afterwards. And this impacts your quality of life importantly. Many women who have survived breast cancer still experience a sense of unfairness. And unfortunately, Ilse, her scar has nicely healed and she is not experiencing some struggles with her scar. She's still experiencing some pain in her chest and her arm. But the problem is that those thoughts and emotions of injustice are making our nerves more sensitive. And that's leading to more and more intense pain complaints that are lasting longer during our life. What I'm doing as a physiotherapist is giving pain education to those patients. And pain education, in short, is an explanation that pain works like an alarm. And it goes off for damage or danger in our body. But due to those thoughts and emotions of injustice, the pain alarm has become more sensitive. And it even goes off without damage or danger. So what can we do now? We have to keep or to increase those thoughts and emotions of injustice in order to make the alarm go well again. And so the alarm can go off for damage or danger in our body. With this new treatment, we hope to allow patients to shift their focus from that feeling of injustice to what she wants to be able to do in her life again, in order to become happier. And so the fight after breast cancer can finally end.
Thank you so much for this presentation. I really liked it.
Thank you.
But it did sound a bit like a sales pitch, as now I'm still wondering, what are you exactly researching? Did you make the pain education? Are you researching how it works?
So the pain education has been developed. So the pain education exists already. So there is a script how you have to educate pain to patients. But now we focused on those thoughts and emotions of injustice. So we adapted it a little for those patients specifically. And now I'm educating, in the practice, patients about the impact of those emotions of injustice on their pain and how we can decrease those pain complaints and how we can work on that.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question.
Thank you.
So you're talking about this kind of education, pain education that you're doing. Do I have to see this as a mental thing, or is it also physical because you're a physiotherapist, or how does it work exactly?
Yeah, indeed, it's maybe a little bit contradictory, but indeed, during pain education, you're making the patient aware about the impact of the psychology on pain complaints or complaints in general. And as a physiotherapist, you're the one that treats pain, and it's important to know as a physiotherapist what the impact is of the psychology or the social factors on those complaints, and to educate patients about that. So it becomes more and more important for physiotherapists to educate patients about it.
So what is specific about the pain in breast cancer patients? Is it, does it help with any cancer patient that survived or other patients that have physical disabilities?
Yeah, what's specific to breast cancer is the cancer treatment that they have followed. So it's an accumulation in some people about the immunotherapy, radiotherapy, or surgery. They have a lot of treatments to do. Then you also have the psychological impact of the patient, like you're diagnosed with it. It's also different to other diseases, other chronic pain diseases. And then, what's specific to breast cancer survivors, it's something that takes your femininity of you, and it's has a big impact on you, and you also know a lot of people with that most of the time, and you know which impact it has, and by educating them, it helps to give them a better future.
Okay. One last question, or no more questions? So it was very clear. Thank you. Based on all our technical issues that we had before, I think I would not say that Muntpunt is a very smart infrastructure. Luckily, we have Maximilian, who knows everything about smart infrastructure. Floor is yours.
So, for thousands of years, humans have been building huge structures, such as bridges, dams, and wind turbines, to overcome the hardships of nature. But unfortunately, if not monitored properly, most structures will tend to fail and collapse. So, what can we do about it? Well, every structure vibrates to its own beat. Take, for example, this wind turbine. So, when the wind blows on the wind turbine, the blades will start turning like this, and this will generate electricity. But unfortunately, this, well, we better show like this. Okay, now it's probably done. But unfortunately, this will induce vibrations in the structures. So whilst most vibrations are harmless, or the Beach Boys would call them the good vibrations, we also have vibrations that can induce damage in the wind turbine, and we'll call those the bad vibrations. So now, how do we distinguish good from bad vibrations? That's where my research comes in. By placing sensors on the top, the middle, and the bottom of the wind turbine, we can measure these vibrations and then detect when changes in the vibrations occur. How do we do this? Through machine learning. Machine learning, I think it's a term most of you have already heard of, but probably not everybody's familiar with it. So think of it as a pianist who has spent many years training his musical ear. When he then plays the piano, let's say he plays a do, he will hear this note as being on tune. If he then continues playing the piano and at some point the do is out of tune, he'll hear this and ask for retuning of the piano. Well, in the same way, our machine learning system is listening to the vibrations of the wind turbine and hears when a bad vibration occurs. This will then trigger a inspection or maintenance of the wind turbine. But why do we care about these vibrations? Well, timely detection of the bad vibrations can prevent damage buildup in the wind turbine and long-lasting inefficiencies. In the same way as we do for wind turbines, we can detect bad vibrations for all types of structures, meaning that we can prevent failure of bridges, dams, and wind turbines and help these last much longer. And that just sounds like music to my ears.
You lost me after the Beach Boys, but maybe the jury heard all of it and have some more questions.
I play the piano, yeah. That's where the inspiration comes from, of course. But I cannot retune a piano myself.
Well, I was wondering how you train your machine learning algorithm, because of course you need to feed it with a lot of data. Where do you find data of bad vibrations?
Yeah, I'm at a very lucky position at the VUB. So my promoter has a spin-off that actually places the sensors on structures such as wind turbines. So last week I went to a conference in Delft. Everybody was complaining we don't have data, and our group were like, oh, no problem for us. We have tons and tons of data. So that's it.
Okay, you use sensors, but when do you determine that something is a bad vibration and when?
That's from knowledge of engineers. So engineers look at the data over a long time, and let's say it's a specific turbine, and then when they see nothing bad happens, we use this as good vibrations, and then the engineer doesn't have to constantly look at the data when it's coming in. In the previous generation of wind turbines, there were only a few turbines at sea, but now we have hundreds and hundreds, and Belgium is even doubling its capacity of offshore wind. We don't have enough engineers that can manually look at this data constantly. So we will need a smart infrastructure to do it for us.
Okay. Thank you.
I was wondering if this smart infrastructure could have prevented that bridge in Italy, in Genoa, would have collapsed in 2018.
If it's used properly, it could have, yes. But I heard it was monitored, the bridge, and it's more political reasons and more like economic reasons that didn't trigger a repairing of the bridge. But I'm not sure about that. But normally these kind of things should be detected upfront by our system.
If you tune a piano, you can use an ear, but you can also really measure the frequency. It's an engineering approach. So you are training now a device, a machine learning kind of thing that you are using, but aren't there also, well, measurements that engineers, frequency that you can really measure that could be used? So can't you measure those bad vibrations?
Yes, so yes, you do measure changes in the vibrations, as you say, but something that the machine learning is used for is what we call normalize for changes in the environment. Temperature has a big influence on vibrations, but a temperature change is not a bad vibration. Damage is something that does create a bad vibration. So that's why we need machine learning rather than just looking at the frequency.
Okay, I think that's it. So thank you again. I think, Liana, you can go now without a microphone. I think that will work perfectly, I'm sure.
Well, I already showed you all the different products. To build attention a bit even more. Thanks. No, kidding. Okay, so I already showed you some of the products today that can really damage your liver. But what happens when your liver gets damaged? Well, then you have scar tissue formation in your liver. And is this a problem? Well, yes, it is. Because if you have this scar tissue formation, then if this occurs for a longer period of time, all the healthy tissue will be replaced by scar tissue. And unfortunately, at this moment, we do not have any medication that can stop this process of scar tissue formation. Well, we as researchers are always looking into new problems and new solutions to solve this. So we are trying to find new medication. But unfortunately, along that journey, we also use a lot of lab animals. So I think that we have found a solution for these two problems, because we have developed mini livers in the lab. So from one mouse liver, we can make around 600 mini livers. And we can use these mini livers in a lab to research, for example, the process of liver disease, but also scarring of the liver, but also to find new medications. So how do we do this? We have our mini livers, and we can grow them under different kind of conditions in the lab. We can grow them under healthy conditions, and then we see that our mini livers resemble a mouse liver. We can also grow them under unhealthy conditions. Then we can give them, for example, an overdose of paracetamol or an unhealthy diet. And then we can see scar tissue formation in our mini livers. But we can also treat our mini livers with new medications that is now being tested in humans as well. And then we see a reduction of the scar tissue in these mini livers. So with our mini livers, we can quickly and easily find new medications. This is not only good news for the lab animals and for the patients, but this is also good news for you and me, because now finally we can have that drink that I need quite a lot, but we don't have to worry because we have our mini livers. But still remember, don't drink too much. Thank you.
In exchange for some of your mini livers, you will get my vote in an instant. Maybe the jury has some questions, so I will ask you to come back.
You made a good comeback and then you were done.
Yeah, but, or at least I thought, but yeah, shoot.
So I was wondering two things, but it's maybe part of the same question. So your mini livers compared as a model compared to testing the drugs in humans. Yeah. How much, I don't even know how to explain it, but how much similarity is there in the effectiveness of the treatment? And what is, would you say, the main difference between those two models?
Yes, so what we mainly compared it to is to other research what is already done in lab animals, and then we can see quite the same results. Of course, a mouse liver and our mini livers, which are made from mouse, is not the same as a human. So probably there are some differences there. But we also need to remember that other models that we are trying to use think of human material or thinking of stem cells at this moment. Unfortunately, in my opinion, they're not efficient enough at this moment to also do that screening for new medication. Because I think the cells that we are using, or the mini livers that we are making, are quite of a high quality, because we can control what we want in our model. And if these are, if they're good enough, yes or no. In comparison to, for example, if you use human material, where you have most of the time some unhealthy material because people are, for example, dying or having some liver cancer, because then we can take some pieces of those livers as well.
I have a question related to the experiment design of the 600 mini livers. So they are all coming from the same liver.
True. Yep.
So they are not independent. Is this a problem, or can you comment on that?
Yes, I can comment on that. Well, what we normally do is, for example, we use two mice, and then we can also mix those cells, so we have at least, let's say, 4 different repeats or 4 different kind of experiments that we can do. But we also see that even if you have cells from the same mice, you already have some variation as well in our experiments. So I think, of course, one mice is relating to one experiment, but still, I think that we can use all these mini livers at least to find some more information.
I can imagine that you submitted your research proposal to the ethics commission or committee.
Yeah.
What was the comment of the commission?
That we use animal, let's say, organs. Of course, if we are if we want to do research on animals or if we want to use animals, it is always very strict. And we need to address why we want to do it, what we think we want to get out of it, and how many animals we need to use it. But if you can show what it can add in value to the community, they're most of the time positive. Yes. So, but of course, yeah, it is quite a hot topic and difficult. But I think it's very important that at least we are still making steps towards, yeah, new and better medicine.
Okay, thank you very much. I think. And then we had all our candidates. I'm just going to the right slide. Well, yeah, this is the slide. We'll take a break from now on. What will we do in the break? You will get a chance to vote for your favorite candidate. So take your phone with you. I will show you the QR code in a minute. The jury will leave and we'll discuss the winner, well, their winner, and we will have our own winner from the audience. Maybe just one small remark. The 3 doctoral school directors can only vote for the presenters from the other doctoral schools. So you do not have a vote in the candidates from your own doctoral school. So just to be clear. Well, take a break, wait for the QR code, and then you have 5 minutes until 8:27 to vote for your favorite candidate. You only have 1 minute left to vote. Only 1 minute. Die pink nog. Ah nee, dit is groen. En die ook.
Dan moet je gewoon nog
Ah,
naar boven
hoeveel
stemmen heeft de public vote gewonnen.
Ah, ja.
Wacht, hè, dat geeft niet. Het zit te casten. Als je gaat praten...
Oh my god, wat is dat?
Als je gaat praten, dan naar boven doen. Ja.
Roepen jullie dan gewoon naar voren of ga je direct?
Wat hè? Je mag ons voorstaan, dat maakt niet uit. Ja, ja.
Kom
Geen
zitten.
probleem voor mij. Voor mij ook niet. Luid praten.
Ah ja, zo. Je had zelfs een micro nodig.
Ja, voor de livestream. Ga jij beginnen met de...
Nee, vorig jaar hebben ze eerst de jury dat ik
Ah ja,
ja.
oké. Dan denk ik nogal lang rak.
Doe maar. Bij mij is het wat korter.
Anders kun je ik jullie aankondigen, als dat goed is. Juist nog aan. Zie ik of dat Sammy ook aan.
Kan dat volgens de presentator doen? Ja.
Well, after a small break, I think we are now all waiting for the moment of truth. And I invited two members of the jury to the stage, and they will, after some excitement, tell us who the winners are. So I'm very curious. Tell me.
Thank you. I will start with our jury winner. A little recap on how we came to this decision. We loved how this person was so at ease and so natural in the presentation. We loved the metaphors, and this will give some away. We loved the musical theme. It resonated well with the jury. It gave us good vibrations. The unanimous winner is Maximilian Weil.
But we have a second winner, so congratulations, Maximilian, and now we're waiting for the second name. Please tell us.
Yeah, I know how it feels and how nervous you all are, because I was standing also here, well, not here, I was at home due to COVID, but I was also waiting for the public vote. And I'm very honored also to present today to you the winner of the public vote. It was quite clear, looking at the numbers of the public voters, and I can say that the jury also supports this decision. We are all in the team of the winner of the public vote, and that is Olaya.
I think it's time for refreshments.
Yeah, but maybe I have just some more practical announcements. So thank you for announcing the winners. We'll have a drink on it later on. So we have lots of reasons to drink, which will we do on the first floor in the salon. Just a practicality, when you leave this building after 8 o'clock, then you have to go through the Grand Café, because the library will close at 8, and I think, yeah, we will be here after 8, so we will all go home through the Grand Café. So I'll see you on the first floor, and thank you for being here.